We are ready to go live. Actually, in a reference to Friends,
Friends is a TV show.
the show. Yeah, I have that
Okay.
raspy, like sexy voice right now that Phoebe was trying to get for a while there.
It also happened on Family Guy too. Peter Griffin got extremely sick, and
He got the cool
Lois was
voice.
like, "Oh my God, you sound so attractive."
Yeah.
Or maybe it was from smoking. Maybe he got it from smoking. I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay. So anyway, trying to battle through that a little bit. Everybody who's going to be joining us, that's the reason for our. I guess we took. I guess we kind of took Monday off. I wasn't feeling the best and still not feeling awesome, but going to power through. There's a lot of stuff kind of going on, a couple big topics, so we definitely wanted to get on here. Apologize for the lateness, but here we are. Here we are. And Chris, I'm going to launch right into this, man. We've talked a little bit about what like Naked and Afraid and like the survival type of shows, right? Like we're both kind of into those shows.
Yep.
I want to take it a little bit step further. How would you do in a zombie apocalypse? How do you feel about your skills?
Uh, it's hard to say. I feel like I would be. I feel like I would do well, like avoiding. Just I'm not much of a risk taker. So
Okay.
in terms of like putting yourself in a bad situation where there's a large group of them, I feel like I would avoid those situations pretty good. I don't know that I would thrive, but I think I would. I would make it.
Start fires, build shelters, capture food. Like that. I mean, how you
Yeah.
doing there?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a lot of gasoline laying around. There's still going to be elements of things I can find and use, so I think I'd be all right.
I feel like a survivor, man. I mean, I'm not like a super outdoorsy guy, but growing up out where we grew up, out in the country, that actually, first things first, if that did happen, if it was a zombie thing, if it was an apocalypse type of deal, I'm going to NL. I'm going to my hometown. I'm bunkering down with my dad.
Oh, yeah.
He's got a lot of knowledge. He's an outdoorsy guy. He's a work with his hands carpenter, like Mr. Fix It. That's where I'm going. And there's not a lot of people there. You can get up in the woods, and I feel like I have a plan in place at least. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's something I really get into those movies. Like 28 Days Later or.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I mean, Zombieland's kind of goofy, obviously, but those kinds of movies where people are surviving and you're trying to find stuff. I Am Legend, love that one. Some people think it's super corny, but whatever. I just like the idea of like post-apocalyptic life and trying to make it, man. Trying to get away from everything and see if you can thrive.
Kind of
a
felt
little
like
bit.
that over the last year in a way.
Yeah. Some ways it did.
Closest we've come to it.
Some ways it did. All right, let's get into some of our Michigan-specific stuff. First things first. One of the developments from late last night. I actually was still awake. My son was not cooperating last night, so I was up late on my phone. And West Coast time, defensive tackle transfer, Jay Toia from USC commits to UCLA. Surprising. I mean, from everything we had heard kind of leading up to it and how his visit went, it looked like Michigan was going to be the pick. Even had some insiders on some other locations saying that it was a done deal, and it's not. It wasn't. And now he's committed to UCLA. Various reasons I've heard, the distance from home, the family factor, things like that. But at the end of the day, this was another guy that Michigan wanted pretty badly. The Polynesian connection with him and Sean Nua that was supposed to be kind of like a big deal for guys like that, just didn't really pan out that way. And now Michigan missed out on him. And a shot over the bow, a shot off across the bow that I tweeted a picture out. They used Toya's photo shoot picture from Michigan for his UCLA commitment. Apparently, this isn't as rare. It's not a rare thing. Actually, I've heard that Michigan may have even done some things like that in the past and would do it without really thinking about it. It's kind of a weird situation. I saw some people in my mentions on Twitter were like, "Isn't there like a copyright thing?" It's strange because like the people who make it, Aaron Bills and the other creatives at Michigan and Michigan's like official Twitter account, Jim Harbaugh, the other coaches, they can't publicly put it out there because they're not allowed to talk about prospective student athletes until the paperwork is in, and it's not yet. So it's like a weird, like they can't really blow the whistle on UCLA for using it because then they would be acknowledging publicly that they make whatever. So it's kind of a weird deal, but I guess at the end of the day, the much bigger deal is that he's not coming to U of M now, and it's another guy that they really could have used, and he had multiple years of eligibility left as an early enrolled freshman who never even really got started at USC. So it's a bummer, man. It looks like Michigan kind of got screwed in the end.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird, and I guess it's further evidence why most people don't even have any interest in following recruiting because, to your point, yeah, it's from everything that we were hearing, it sounded like this was going to be a done deal. I mean, we were even at that camp the other day, and we were thinking that the announcement was about to come through. I know that we saw, Nua on the phone, and we were all sort of wondering, like, was this it? We even had the article prepared for it. I mean, this was one that was expected to come through, and it didn't. And I don't think it's not really puzzling why he decided to stay where he's at. I mean, it is close to home. He's a younger guy. Going from USC to UCLA, I don't know. That's kind of like moving from Michigan to Michigan State sort of deal. You know what I mean? So that's a little bit of an odd move given how well he seemed to be doing in spring ball. But, these things happen. Yeah, I thought the photo was just a little bit of salt in the wound. You can't help but notice those things. We had a little fun with it. But at the end of the day, you're right. It's a guy that Michigan wanted. Unfortunately, they didn't get him, and that's the story.
Yeah, I mean, this is another case of like, if he had picked Michigan, people would have been really excited about it, and he didn't pick Michigan, and people are like, he's never going to play. I mean, like, come on, you got to be genuine with what's happening here. The Michigan coaches wanted him really badly. They brought him in for an official visit, spent time with him, did the photo shoot, was prepared to have him on the roster, and possibly potentially contribute as a freshman because of the shift to the 3-4, trying to get bulkier in the middle. He fills that role as a kind of a squatty 6'2", 315, 320 pounder, along with Jordan Whitley, who they landed a couple weeks ago. Now suddenly you've got two big run stoppers in the middle of your 3-4 that you can rotate in and out of there, and you've got some depth. I don't know if he would have played a lot. He is a true freshman. He's still going to have to get stronger and figure everything out a little bit, but they wanted him, and they didn't get him. You chalk it up as a loss. It is a loss. There's no doubt about it. When Michigan's bringing kids in for official visits, they want them, and they would do anything at that point to sign them, and they're not. So I don't. He's not the kind of guy that was going to save the defense this year. I'm not saying that, but it's a guy that they wanted. Talented kid. Obviously went to USC and now is going to UCLA. So he's going from big program to big program, and Michigan wanted him, and he decided to stay close to home. He's going to be a Bruin. So it is what it is. It is a little bit of a bummer. And again, I don't know if that means Michigan's going to continue to look through the transfer portal for more defensive tackle help. But they've got one guy in Jordan Whitley. I think it's pretty clear that they would like to add at least one more. So we'll see how that goes.
I'm losing any and all confidence of anything coming out of the West Coast for Michigan. It just, when you start to get into the California-ish type area, it's just, I don't know. Maybe it's because of the way things have recently gone with Charbonnet, Xavier Worthy, Giles Jackson. Mm-hmm. I just, I don't know. Whenever I see somebody's name pop up from the West Coast, I'm like, my mind is like, okay, cool, if they come, great, but I'm not expecting it.
Full disclosure, as a person who used to cover recruiting exclusively, that would happen so often with California kids more than any other state. Yeah. I don't know what it is about, maybe Ann Arbor has a little bit of a California vibe, right? It's liberal, it's diverse, you got a lot of cool, like an art scene, a food scene, like it's not California, but I'm saying there seems to be a large number of kids from California who have high, genuine interest in Michigan, and it doesn't pan out for whatever reason. Like, they like Michigan. Michigan's in their top 5 and their top 3. They take an official visit, and then they go to USC. Like, it goes that way so often with kids from California, and it's like recruiting across the country. Like, I don't know what the exact percentage is, but it's high. Like, kids typically stay pretty close to home. It's a long trip, man. Even on a plane, that's a long trip to go from California to Ann Arbor. So, yeah, I'm with you. Like, you see California, and you automatically just assume not coming. And if they do come, they're going to leave at some point.
Right.
Because we've seen that in recent I guess, months. It's been more prevalent in the last few months than in the past few years, like you said, with Charbonnet, Xavier Worthy, who never even really came, I guess. Giles Jackson, and now Toia. So, yeah, it's a bummer, man. Talented kids out there that show interest, and then they decide to go somewhere else. So, see how it plays out moving forward. Defensive tackles in the transfer portal. You mentioned Nua at the Wayne State. Did it have a specific name? I forget. The Michigan.
I think it was just the Wayne State football
camp. Yeah, football showcase, maybe something. No, that was the one at Ferris, the Michigan football showcase. Anyway, pretty big camp, pretty solid camp in the heart of Detroit, down there at Wayne State University. Sean Nua and a graduate assistant were there, and also Mike Hart, just kind of observing drills, helping out a little bit here and there. There weren't a lot of big time prospects there. I think maybe a couple with a Michigan offer. Michael Williams from West Bloomfield was there in street clothes, just kind of hanging out. Brandon Davis Swain from West Bloomfield was doing the same. Jeremiah Caldwell, the recently offered cornerback from Belleville, who's committed to Kentucky, he was there and working out. Pretty skinny, but long and rangy, and Steve Klinkscale likes him quite a bit. So anyway, it was a solid camp. It was a decent camp. But what I took away again was that, that Michigan Block M, man, the kids just, even though they're not doing very well and people are a little bit down on what the season might look like, people still gravitate towards the coaches wearing that gear, and we saw it. I mean, we saw Nua like dapping up kids left and right, and crowds kind of forming around him. And Mike Hart was a little bit more reserved, but he still had.
Like that's kind of his thing, I've seen him now at a couple different camps, and it just seems like that's the way he operates.
That's exactly what I wrote up. I mean, he's more about his business. He's not as, I don't know, jovial, I guess is a word you could use. I mean, Nua's just got this big old smile. He looks like a big teddy bear out there, man, and he's an awesome dude. I got a chance to talk to him one-on-one, which I was really appreciative of. We put that up, and what I wanted to say about that and seeing him at the camp, seeing him in action, and then getting a chance to talk to him was the biggest quote that he had from the story. And he said, "I know Michigan fans are sick of us talking, and I agree with them." And I was just like, whoa. That's not like a news flash, but I don't think I've ever heard a Michigan coach say that. I don't think I've ever heard a Michigan coach say those words that directly. If they have, it has slipped my mind at this moment, I guess. But I appreciate the hell out of that. I really do. Now, it still something still has to be done about it. It's not just going to like, oh, he acknowledged it, cool, like let's get it going then. But I don't know, man. I liked that that bluntness, that honesty. I like the fact that he was okay saying that on the record, and he spoke for Aiden. The question I asked him was just about Aiden Hutchinson. Like, I didn't prompt him at all. It wasn't like I said, what do you think about the outside noise, or how confident are you guys about this year, when a lot of people aren't very confident. I just asked him, like, what's Aiden Hutchinson been like coming off the injury, back for his senior year? What can we expect to see from him? And he launched into that on his own. So I don't know, that spoke volumes to me. Like I said, it wasn't like I poked and prodded for a quote. He just offered it up. I thought that was kind of telling.
Yeah, isn't it amazing how much a little bit of honesty, like it makes such a big difference, right? It's comforting to know that somebody, and I'm not saying that the guys who are still there aren't aware of it. I think they are, but it's comforting to actually hear somebody put it out there and acknowledge reality, right? That they've done a lot of talking and that the time for talking is over. And you're right, the results have to come. But I also think, if there wasn't such a sense of, the next game is always the most important game, or, these very generic statements that you get, like when you have somebody on your staff or a head coach who comes out and just puts it like it is and says, yeah, we haven't done very well. I haven't done my job. I haven't done what I was hired to do, and we're not doing what we're supposed to do on the football field. That little bit of honesty goes a long way, and so I certainly appreciate whether he intended to do it or he didn't. I definitely appreciate the fact that Nua came out and said it, and he's right, because everybody feels the same way. They're tired of the talk, like the meaningless, generic statements. Either come out and say something meaningful or just keep quiet and get the work done, and that, I think that's where most people are at.
Yeah, I don't know how you couldn't be. I mean, at this point, like I would love to be optimistic. I'm hopeful. I mean, that's about as far as I can go. I hope and wish that Michigan's better than I think they're going to be. I just don't see it. I mean, so yeah, I think you're right, and I agree with you 100%. I mean, we've talked about this at length. Going to these press conferences and the coach speak, and just tell us something that's real. Like you're not going to like get in trouble for it. And people, right. I feel like people pick apart and take shots at you more when you're guarded and you give the coach speak and you give the generic stuff than if you just say, you just own up to it and say whatever you really think and whatever you really feel. I don't know, man. Like, when Harbaugh comes out and says something in a press conference that's just clearly not true. There's no factual evidence to support it. Like, I've been really happy with what the quarterback has done. I don't know. I'm just throwing a random example out there, and everybody's like, "Are you kidding me? How could you stand up there and say something like that?" That just doesn't go over well. And I know there's a little bit of, coaches have to do the politicking thing, and they want to support their guys in a public light, and maybe they're hammering them in behind closed doors in a meeting. We don't see that, but at the end of the day, I thought it was really refreshing that Nua took that route and took it on his own without me having to ask him specifically about that type of thing, and it did go a long way. And I think a lot of people who were who saw it on social media and who commented on it said the same thing. They said, "That's how I feel," and I'm glad he said that. Yeah, but you still got to do it now. It's time to show up.
Right, but 100% transparency is such a big deal when the program's doing well and and winning and performing at a high level. Nobody's really sitting around speculating what's going on with the program. The results speak for themselves and everybody enjoys it. Now when your program struggles and you're dropping games you shouldn't and you're getting your ass handed to you by your rivals, fans and media personality and everybody's going to start to talk and try to dissect what the issue is, and the more guarded you are, the more you sort of put up a wall, the more people are going to speculate, the louder the noise is going to get. And so I think if the coaching staff took some cues from Nua and just was a little more forthcoming and a little more honest, and you're right, they don't got to open up the playbook for us, but talk to us about some things that are actually real, some things that you're doing. And I think people don't get enough credit. I think people are far more willing to be understanding if they feel like they're getting some insight into what's going on.
Yeah, and I think to even build on that a little bit more is there doesn't have to be any trashing either. It's not like they Jim Harbaugh doesn't have to come out at a press conference after a loss and say, or I'm specifically thinking back to, he said, I don't remember which game, I don't remember what the exact stat line was, but he said something about like, Shea Patterson was fantastic today or something, and everyone was like, you got to be kidding me. Like there's no way you really think that as a former quarterback, as his coach. I don't see anything wrong with, politely even or respectfully saying like, yeah, he just wasn't that great today. Would have liked him to do this a little bit better. Would have liked that he, would have seen this coverage a little bit clearer, or would have liked that he didn't make that throw. Like this is freaking college football. This isn't Pee Wee. These kids aren't 5.
Right.
Like, and not to mention, like we've seen little peaks of stuff. You see clips leak out, and I mean, Michigan granted access for that Amazon series the other, several seasons ago. Dude, they tear dudes' asses up in practice when the cameras normally aren't rolling. So to come out and say something a little bit critical and truthful in the public at a press conference, I think is totally above board, and again would go a long way with how people perceive what's going on, how people react, how people respond to what's being said. I don't know why that's such a thing in sports. It's like, it's not just Michigan. I think Michigan is probably on, one further end of the spectrum a little bit when it comes to, playing it safe and the coach speak and not giving anything away. But it's everywhere. I mean, you see it at that, halftime of the NBA playoff games. Coaches do. I mean, it's all the time. It's every sport. It's every level. But I do think that if it was a little bit more like what Nua said, a little bit more often, you'd have a little bit more respect, at least, for what's happening and what you're seeing, and again, kind of approach it differently.
Well, think back to that exchange. Was it 2018 or 2019 when a reporter asked something about Jim Harbaugh, or asked the question about the talent gap between Michigan and Ohio State, and Harbaugh's answer was
Jordan Strack from the Toledo area, who I've talked to multiple times. Good dude, good at his job, has a pretty big following. Asked a pretty pointed.
Fair question.
Absolutely fair.
Right. So asked him essentially to talk a little bit about the talent gap between Michigan and Ohio State, right? That was the question. To which
this was
Harbaugh,
after like a 30-point beatdown or something.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly.
To which Harbaugh responded, I'll answer your questions, but not your insults. That answer right there, had it been a different answer with a different type of emotion, I'm not saying that words are going to make a big difference, but if he had sat there and said, look, this is not good enough. This is not what fans should expect. It's not what I expect. The players aren't performing well enough. The coaches aren't performing. That might all be self-evident, but still, like, coming out and saying that and taking a strong stance and showing that at least you have an awareness of what's going on around you and that you get it and you can relate to the people that are frustrated and you're just as frustrated. It makes you seem more human than like a guy who's just like a deer in the headlights, just like staring and doesn't want to answer or give short answers. I think fans are like, what the hell are we even doing with this guy? Like, he won't even talk.
You just hit the nail on the head. You just, a couple simple words. It shows that he gets it, because when the results are what they are, and then you also answer questions like that, people automatically say like, this guy doesn't know what the hell he's doing. He doesn't even realize. He can't even address something that's painfully obvious. Like, you might not like it, Coach Harbaugh. I'm sorry if you feel like your team is less talented, and that means that you haven't done the job the way that you're supposed to. But like, come on, you can see it, can't you? So why can't you speak on it at least a little bit? And I don't know how he took that as an insult. Like, that's insane to me. Like, you just got beat by 30, dude. Like, it's a fact. It's not like he's attacking you. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Right.
I mean, we've gone up and down about how Michigan has talent, has recruited well, putting guys in the NFL, not at the same clip as Ohio State, not at the same level as Ohio State, but like 30, 40, 50 points worse. I don't know, man. I think you see other teams that are not as good as Michigan keeping it closer with Ohio State. So there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, and we kind of got off on a tangent here just from what we saw from Nua at the camp, but it really struck me. I mean, as soon as he said it out of his mouth, I was like, I'm recording it. I'm like, damn, there's the story. It's cool. It's cool that he talked about Mike McDonald. It's cool that he talked about Aiden Hutchinson. And actually, I wanted to bring up one more thing before we move off of Nua. It's cool that he talked about the new coaches and working with them. But I was like, I mean, there it is. You just don't get it. So when you get it, when you don't get honesty and directness like that very often, so when you do, it stands out, and I appreciated that. So that's the angle that I played up. Didn't try to put words into his mouth. Didn't try to paint a weird picture. He said it without me even asking about it. So I thought I thought it was important. I did think it was funny though. And I didn't realize it. I think Steve Clinkscale is technically the oldest, but it's not by much. I asked Nua, what's it like being, and I didn't even. I think I did know this, but when I actually looked it up in prepping for the questions, I was like, damn, he really is the only one. He's the only defensive coach back from last year's staff. So he's working with all brand new guys, new coordinator, new position coaches behind him. Everything is brand new for him. He was the only one retained. And I asked him about that, and his answer initially, I was like, oh, where's he about to go with this? He said, it's good and bad. And I was like, oh, shit, how's it bad? Let's get to that, And he said it's bad because now I'm the oldest guy. He's like, I was the youngest guy, now I'm the oldest guy, which I think Klink's got him by a couple years. But yeah, Nua's like 40. I think Clinkscale's 42 or 43, and all those other guys, dude, are younger than we are. They're, which is crazy to think about. Like one of the biggest programs in the country, run by all these dudes who were, would have been 4 and 5 and 6 and 8. And like Jay Harbaugh's example, or as Jay Harbaugh as an example, like 8 years behind us in high school.
It's crazy.
I know there's Michigan fan dudes out there that are in their 60s and 70s that are like, I'm older than everybody in the whole damn sport. And it happens that way for all of us, right? I mean, eventually we get to that point. I'm still hanging on. There's like a few guys left in the NBA, a few guys left in the NFL who are older than me, but not many. Yeah. Not many. I
haven't made that transition mentally yet. Like, I still view athletes as, even though I know they're not, I still view them as older than me just because of the way they, like, we go to the high school, or the camps where there's high school, like the Wayne State camp. I don't remember what the kid's name was, but I remember he was number 69 in a black jersey, and he played inside linebacker, and the dude was just jacked. Like, he looked like he was in his mid-30s. I think those guys, we were on the other side of the field, and some guys even made a comment about, like, they pointed him out. Like, some of these guys, man, the way they're built physically, like, I don't know how they get it, but guys like you and I, like, it's like a different species almost.
That one of the must have been a parent of somebody else that was there. The guy was like, "We're gonna need a birth certificate, a driver's license, and a proof of insurance." I mean, he said like 3 things, and like 1 or 2 that the kid wouldn't even have as a high schooler. But it was just really funny. Yeah, dude was like, if he didn't like, I think you went up to him and asked him a little bit about him because he stood out. I mean, he was just jacked.
You could
in
see
a way that a lot of them weren't.
Yeah.
If he didn't enjoy your question, he could have just thrown you physically off of the field. So
no question about it.
Yeah, and you're not like a tiny guy. So anyway, it is that way. And I've told you stories about how I did a one-on-one interview with Sione Huma several years back when Utah came to town and played Michigan. He was from Utah, so they made him available to us. And he knew a lot of guys on the team, and just they thought it would make for a good story. But like, I can't remember who else was a big time player at that time. Maybe like Wilton Spate, Jabril Peppers, some other big time guys. When they do those media scrums like that, they bring out 4, 5, 6 guys at a time. And he was by himself. He was just standing there, like, waiting for people to talk to him. So I was like, yeah, what the hell? I'll go over here and talk to Homo while there's 40 media people surrounding Jabril and Wilton Spade or whoever it was. Maybe Rudock. I'd have to look back at the year. But anyway, went over there and started talking to him, asked him a question. He starts talking, then he just goes, he just gets flustered and stops. He's like, can we please stop, man? I just want to start over. I just want to gather my thoughts. Like, I just don't know what I'm about to say. And it, like, hit me. I'm like, this kid's like 20 years old. You know, I'm like a lot older than him. I got a recorder in his face. There's all these media people around. Like, I'm a little bit nervous at that point because it was kind of new to me asking Michigan football players that I watch every weekend on TV. I'm just in here in a room with them asking them questions. Like, I hope they don't think I'm an idiot. Right. And then here's this guy who, like, folded up like a lawn chair because he didn't want to he didn't want to say something stupid, and he was like embarrassed. I'm like, damn. Yeah. So yeah, you do forget that a little bit, but that's part of what makes it fun. I mean, you when you get into a good rhythm and a good zone, and you're asking questions like that, you realize like they're just people, man. They're out there trying to do their best, and so are you. And sometimes it turns into some really good dialogue and some good interviews. So anyway, props to Sean Nua for saying that. Again, now we do have to see it. I mean, there are a lot of people not real happy with him, to be honest. I mean, the defensive line units haven't been super productive under him. He seems to keep getting beat on recruiting, recruiting battles, and now with a couple of transfers, and it just is like, the whole defensive staff was turned over and he got kept. Why? I've seen a ton of people saying that, asking that question. So I don't know. I mean, like, you and I didn't have it wasn't like we were hanging out with the dude for 6 hours, like seeing the ins and outs of everything he does. But why do you think he's still there? I mean, like, what would be your justification? I have an answer myself. I'm just curious, as someone who came on, hasn't known him as long as I have, and has just now started to see him in action a little bit, if you've got an opinion on that.
The only answer I can give is from afar. He just seems like a real nice, enjoyable dude that you would want to be a part of your program, a culture guy, a locker room guy, a guy that players are going to love to play for. The danger with people like that is if the results aren't there, it makes it that much harder to move on, right? Yeah. I almost think there was an element of that with Don Brown, like Don Brown's passion and his fire, and everybody loved that, but it just wasn't working on the field, and so sometimes that can buy you, if you got a great personality, can buy you some time.
It sure can.
But it was... guys like us know. But at some point, the results just have to be there.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten a chance to speak to him a handful of times, on the field about football stuff, off the field, just kind of BSing a little bit. I was down on the field taking photos at a camp several years ago, and I got a couple of really cool shots of him with his kids, and I sent them to him, and he was just so appreciative. And then I bumped into him at a restaurant in Ann Arbor, and we talked about it. He's like the coolest dude. He's super nice. He obviously knows his stuff. I mean, he played in the NFL. He's from American Samoa, so he's got the Polynesian connection. He lived out west. He went to Utah State or maybe BYU, I think. Lived in Arizona some, lived in California some, I think. Is got a pretty cool backstory. But if you point to all the reasons why he absolutely should have his job, you don't get very far on the list. And that's not a knock on him as a guy. It's just kind of the way it is. And like I said, a lot of people are feeling that way about him. This Jay Toia thing is just the most recent, where it's like, dude, that's your guy. Like, that's another Polynesian dude. It's your position. It's your position group. Go get him. And Michigan didn't, for whatever reason. Certainly a hell of a lot easier for Toia to go to UCLA than it is to Michigan. I get that, but that's kind of the guy that's the kind of guy that Nua is supposed to reel in, and he didn't. So I can understand the frustration a little bit, but yeah, he is a great dude, and I've enjoyed every interaction I've ever had with him, and I've heard nothing but good things from the players that play for him, which I think also goes a long way. And we'll see this year. I think this year is going to be really telling because the scheme is going to be different. And those defensive linemen are going to be turned loose a little bit more. So we'll see if what Nua's teaching them, technique-wise, specific instances, certain moves, if how involved he is in, stunts and games up front. I don't know, and we don't know exactly how much Don Brown asked them to do that kind of stuff. But I do know for a fact that anchor position at defensive end for Don Brown was not asked to just go terrorize the quarterback. They had a lot of other jobs, and guys like Rashawn Gary and Aiden Hutchinson didn't dig that. So we'll see what that means for this year. We'll see how much more, Nua gets to cut loose. But again, just kind of interesting, a lot of stuff interesting just from seeing him for a handful of hours at that camp at Wayne State. All right, moving on to another camp, one that we weren't at, but that we've seen some reports coming out of, the Elite 11 camp in California, where the quarterbacks battle to make it to the finals, and then they go and compete against each other to basically be named, the best all-around quarterback in the country. Michigan's top target in 2022, Nate Johnson, has been turning heads, man. The kid is just a phenomenal athlete. I wrote about it last week or the week before. Ran a 10.49 in the 100, which is the fastest high school time in the state of California. Like, that's crazy, man. Like, that's fast. Like, that's faster than Jabril Peppers. Like, that, I think it's faster than Xavier Worthy, maybe, or real close. And he, like, Michigan fans wanted that dude purely just because he was a burner. And now you're talking about a guy who plays quarterback that is on that level speed-wise. I know you're like, you're all in. You're all in on fast dual threat guys.
Yeah, I don't know that it's Nate Johnson. I love the idea. I love the fact that he's a track star. I was a little bit surprised by the 4.540. I thought that would be quicker, but maybe it takes him a minute to get up to speed.
I mean,
and then
4.5's fast, man.
It's
It
fast,
is. It
right.
is.
But I'm so used to, like, I don't know, when I think of a speedster, I'm in like the 4.4, 4.3.
I'm with you.
And that's kind of, and comparing that to a guy like Denard Robinson, who was a phenomenal track star. I think he had 4.3 speed, and you could see it when he got out in the open. But the bottom line is, and I think we're in agreement on this, that if you want to compete in today's college football, you've got to have a guy behind center that can do both. He can't just be like, maybe Alabama can get away with that a little bit, but a program like Michigan in the Big Ten, you got to have a quarterback that can move around and that can pose a legitimate threat with his legs. I think we thought Joe Milton was going to be that, and it almost looked like he was running in mud. I don't know if it was an injury, what was going on with him, but he never quite turned into that. I know he was a bigger dude and, could have been used a little bit differently, but overall, I'm all in on guys that are true dual threat track star plus quarterback. Get those guys out there, really good athletes. When they get into space, anything can happen.
Michigan doesn't have a guy like that right now.
No.
Like, J.J. McCarthy's a good athlete. He's not elite.
He ain't that.
Bowman, who's coming in, is a notch below J.J., I would say, and McNamara is probably right there or even a notch below Bowman. So it's like they don't have a guy who can pop off a – even Shea Patterson was a pretty good athlete. He wasn't running 4.4 or anything like that, but he had like a 70 or 80 yarder against Wisconsin the one year, and so he, obviously when the play comes together just right and everybody bites on the zone read and Patterson spills out the back end and there's nobody there, like he's going to be able to get some yards. But I'm with you, man. I love the guys that can really pressure a defense and make a big play all by themselves.
Yeah.
Didn't know a lot about Nate Johnson until, the last handful of weeks where I've really been diving into him a little bit more. He's coming for an official visit to Michigan this weekend. Would not be surprised if he committed. I think there's a real good shot that Michigan lands this kid.
California kid, though, right?
Another Cali kid, right? Another Cali kid. They're recruiting 2 kids from California and 1 kid from Alabama. That's their 3 quarterback options right now. So none of those are all that promising. We've talked about – and look, like – you can go up and down Michigan's entire roster. There's a ton of kids on there from out of the region. But when you go class by class, a lot of the guys are from pretty close. That's just kind of how it works. Michigan does have to go out a little further than some places because there's just there's not 100 Michigan level players in any given class in the state of Michigan. Like, you're not going to get that. So anyway, I like what I'm seeing about him. I think he had the highest – I don't remember exactly what that score is. It's a combination of multiple things, right? You put the story up. What exactly did that?
40 time, vertical time, things like that, and then they take all those and they give it an overall number, and he tested at the top of all the quarterbacks that were there. So
some formula, and he was number 1, and so he is advancing to the finals. So yeah, that'll be cool. That'll be cool if he does end up committing to Michigan, and then he's competing to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country. By this metric, and look, like. These underwear Olympics, that they call them, these camps where the guys are out there running around in T-shirts and shorts and they're throwing against air, it's only worth so much. But if you go back and look at some of the quarterbacks that have competed in that Elite 11 and won the thing, like, pretty damn good players. So it does test enough things to make you excited about it if it's one of your team's guys. But we'll see how that plays out. But I'm all aboard the Nate Johnson train, man. That was just I don't know what that hand gesture was right there. Fly buzzed.
Can't wait.
Fly. Good Lord, I saw it on playback and I about
I saw it. I saw it. I was just going to let it go. I had your back, man.
I had to comment on it because it looked so bad up to myself. There was a fly in my face, and I did the little what are the spirit finger? I don't even know. I don't know what you want to call that.
Well, at least you didn't scream. So
I can't scream if I even tried, but that was bad. At least on the podcast, there's no visual. But I mean, anybody watching right now is, I don't know, clip that if you want to. We can make a GIF out of it. Maybe I'll do that. That was bad. But anyway, moving on. There's that damn fly again. That was a little more manly. I might have got him that time.
Woo.
This was don't make me laugh because I'll launch into one of these coughing attacks. This was getting some attention, man. You and I have been very, very forthright about anytime we can pull Ohio State into the mix, we're going to do it because it gets attention. Maybe for the wrong reasons at this point when you've lost 15 out of 16, but it is what it is, man. Michigan and Ohio State are rivals. The best rivalry in college football, has lost a lot of luster over the last 2 decades because Michigan has not been competitive and is really... it's just they've fallen so far behind in this matchup that it's almost not even a matchup anymore. Ohio State has a whole display, a whole shrine of Michigan stuff. They focus on it day in and day out and day in and day out. And over the last handful of years, everybody's just kind of got the sense that Michigan doesn't really do that. They don't really treat it the same way. I mean, there's pictures that have leaked out where the equipment guys at Ohio State will tape up the helmets to look like the winged helmets. And we saw last year, a Michigan jersey on the floor, and they're stomping on it and ripping their feet across it. And we just haven't really seen a lot of that from the Michigan side. But we did some recruits were in town over the weekend, and some pictures started floating around. And up in the corner, in the weight room, a big bold sign that says, "What are you doing to beat Ohio State today?" And I mean, I like it, but at this point, it's like, I don't know, too little, too late. Like, that's it? That's all you got? Like something 30 feet off the ground, way up there that you really don't even have to look at if you don't want to. Plus, it's just like, I mean, come on, it just looks kind of lame because like you haven't been. I don't know. I found myself having a lot of different thoughts on this thing back and forth. Like, if you haven't been treating it that way for 16, 18, 20 years, then it's like, what are you doing right now?
Right.
But also, like, there's a part of me that has always thought, like, do you really need to see it on a wall to know that you want to kick their ass and that you hate them? I mean, I don't know. Like, if I was a player, I wouldn't need that. But I don't know. I found myself having a lot of thoughts about this, and it was certainly making the rounds, and a lot of people chimed in on it. We got some people in the comments right now chiming in about it.
You know what? You know why a little sign like that got so much attention? It goes back to what we were talking about with Nua a little bit. The lack of transparency. The fact that they get their ass kicked by Ohio State so much, people are asking, what are you doing to prepare for it? It's very clear what Ohio State does. They put out the hype videos. They've got the clock. They've got the messages everywhere. They think about Michigan 365 days a year, and they work towards beating Michigan that amount of time. So when finally Michigan fans get to see some sort of glimmer of hope that, it's June, and they're thinking about Ohio State, okay, I feel a little bit good about that, but I wouldn't feel nearly as good about it if, over the course of the years, Harbaugh would just say, like, yes, we're actively preparing for them every single day, and takes the same approach that you get out of Columbus. We just don't get that in Ann Arbor, and I've never understood why guys associated and connected with the program are so hesitant to come out and take that head on. It's like they avoid those questions. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to address it directly, and it's really weird. Probably the record has a lot to do with it, and I'm guessing Mr. Harbaugh just prefers not to talk about it.
Yeah, and you've heard, coaches and players alike they've said, like, yeah, we're just treating it like another week this week.
Yeah,
like no, dude, like no, that's not another week. And maybe it's, I hope, hand to God, I hope that it's not like that behind closed doors, and when they're getting pumped up and they're watching film and they're keying on who they're going to be across from come Saturday, but. It's kind of played out that way.
I was going to say, when the results are what they are, it's easy to make that assumption.
Got a couple of Buckeyes here in the comments.
Go to hell.
You guys don't have anything better to do tonight? Get the hell out of here. I'm just kidding. Like, thanks for listening. Thanks for listening. Probably not a lot of people in that market that can do this kind of thing. I don't know.
Yeah,
Anyway.
yeah.
No, I should say that. I know some people who cover Ohio State, and I like them a lot,
No,
actually.
no, stand behind your words.
Yeah, I know a couple of them. Brendan, that's like the, what am I looking for? It's like the Payless Shoes version of my name.
There you go. Yeah, yeah.
I'm trying not to offend any. You can't offend anybody anymore. Can't say anything. Jesus,
It's like the St. John's Bay version.
yeah,
Brandon.
yeah. So if your name is Brendan, you suck. Whatever. I don't care. No, you don't. You might suck. I don't know. Anyway, it got a lot of attention. It wasn't even intentional either. The kid was like posing in the foreground, and it just was like way up in the back. And
Yeah.
of course, people grabbed it, blew it up, and now it's like front and center. Which I mean, hey, that's what's going to happen when things.
We're looking for any sign of hope at this
dude.
point.
That's
it
where
couldn't
it's
be
at.
more clear, given the traction that little photograph got, how much people are just looking for any glimmer of hope that Michigan might be able to turn the tide.
And dude, rightfully so. Michigan fans would be doing the same thing. Ohio State fans are just like laughing. They're like, cool sign.
Right. Yeah.
But like, and the ones that aren't informed are like, man, we're rent free in your guys' head, bro. And then people
Yeah.
are like, have you seen the shrine at Ohio State? It's like
Right.
a room. It's like a
Yeah.
room size display, which I'm fine with. It should be that way. It didn't become the best rivalry in sports by treating it like every other week. So.
Yeah.
I'm totally fine with the attention that it gets. I just find myself having some mixed feelings about, like, is that really the only thing that Michigan has, and did they just get it? I mean, I know that weight room itself is only a year old or whatever,
Yeah.
in terms of being completed. So
Well, I saw
don't
last
know.
year in the weight room they had something similar up, and I think that's actually on a big television that they have up there, because they had the quote from Ryan Day when he supposedly said he was going to hang 100 on Michigan. Now, obviously, that game never occurred, which became a whole nother
Yeah.
little spat between Michigan and Ohio State. But obviously, we're both extremely hopeful that these little messages aren't all that's being discussed within the program about Ohio State. And obviously, given the way things have gone, you would like to get some insight into what they're doing. Do you guys have something actively planned every single day for Ohio State? Because we know that's what they're doing in Columbus.
Yeah.
It seems like what they're doing down there is working. Maybe we should swallow our pride a little bit and join the party.
it's tough though, because I mean, I can empathize. I can put myself in the position and be like, if I'm Ohio State and I'm confident I'm going to tax that ass by 40 points, I'll talk about it all day. Like, yeah, let's talk about it. Well, what do you want to know? I'll tell you everything you want to know about it. Where on the flip side, Michigan's like, cool, we'll talk about it, and then this quote will be taken out of context, and then we'll look like jackasses when we're walking off the field in late November. Like, I get it, man. Like, until it's a legitimate competitive rivalry again, it's hard for Michigan, the people in the program, the people passionate about the program, to really have much of an opinion.
Well, look
on
what
it.
happened to Nico Collins, right?
Yeah, man.
I mean,
His
jumped
quote
all
was-
over that. The quote,
His quote was dragged through the mud.
did not go over well.
And if he really feels that way about himself personally, like, great. But yeah, like you can't say that you've got as much or more talent than the team you've been beat 15 out of 16 times by 50 points.
It's a case of a guy probably going to bat for his teammates and
Yeah.
wanting to stick up for him. But when you listen to it as a fan and people on the outside, you're like, oh shit, did he really just say?
Did he really say
Michigan's
that?
got as much or more talent? And then of course it's going to blow up. So yeah, I get that there's a part of it. Like, why should I say anything about Ohio State? Because no matter what it is I say, it's going to get put in an article and people are going to be pissed off at me. And it goes back to what Nua said. People are just tired of the talk. It's a no-win situation. We
It's
want
tough,
them to
man.
say. We want them to talk, tell us what's going on, and then when they tell us, shut up and just do it.
Yeah,
That's why they get paid the big bucks, though.
Hey, yeah, it's not Pee Wee football. It's not Pee Wee football. That's part of what comes with it. All right, we're gonna finish up on a little bit of a somber, unfortunate, gross, however you want to look at it when you talk about this Robert Anderson, Bo Schembechler saga. Jim Harbaugh has now kind of put his foot in his mouth a little bit, and it's probably going to go in even deeper after tomorrow, or whenever you're listening to this, after Thursday's press conference with Matt Schembechler, who is one of Bo's sons, getting ready to speak publicly at what's going to be a huge press conference. We'll be there. bringing it to you as best we can. There's going to be a ton of media coverage on this thing, the way it's being outlined and portrayed now. But basically, one of Bo's sons is now saying that he was a victim of Dr. Anderson and that his dad 100% knew about it. I mean, they've kind of titled the press conference as such. I mean, they didn't go into a lot of detail. I'm sure that's what tomorrow's going to be for. And a couple of players who were anonymously named in the report are also going to go on the record and speak publicly. They've already come out with their names. So yeah, that's going to be quite a spectacle. And now you've got these comments that Jim Harbaugh made just last week at that Sound Mind, Sound Body camp that we put up on the website that we thought he botched horribly. Made a massive mistake by not even mentioning the victims, and just came off looking like a dummy. I mean, there's really not a better way to put it. Like there's a 100 things he could have said in that instance that would have been better than what he said. He just flat out dropped the ball. You said it best. I think he had a chance to do the right thing and he didn't. He did not do it.
Yeah, we talked. I remember when the report first came out. I don't know what month it seems like it was a few months ago at this point. We hopped on a podcast. We started talking about it immediately. And I remember saying, something to the effect of, this is something that Michigan has to get right. We don't know what they're going to do, but whatever it is, whatever response they have, be it Ward Manuel, be it Jim Harbaugh, or anybody else associated with the university, they've got to get the messaging right. And then lo and behold, we're up at the camp at Ferris State, and finally somebody's able to corner Jim Harbaugh and ask him about it, and he just blows it. And it was almost as if those conversations never took place. It seems to me when something like this happens, you get in a room and you say, how are we going to handle this? How are we going to attack this? And what is going to be our messaging? Because whatever it is we say, especially when it's the first comment from like a guy like Jim Harbaugh, people are going to listen and pay attention to it. It was tone deaf. It was a missed opportunity. He didn't say anything about the victims. I get that he has a love for Bo Schembechler, and I get that he wants to really hang on his experience with him as if that's reality, but there is a whole nother side to this that he failed to even mention. And this press conference, from the reports I've read, are a direct rebuttal to what Harbaugh said up at that Ferris State camp. They want to make clear what happened.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And like you said, it is one of two things, man. Either Michigan dropped the freaking ball and didn't do any PR, with Harbaugh, and didn't tell him, like,
how could you not?
I know you love Bo, Jim. I know it, but you got it. This is what you got to say. You got to say this. Like, that meeting had to have taken place, and if it didn't, so it's either one of two things. Either that meeting didn't take place, which is malpractice, or Harbaugh went rogue and did whatever the hell he wanted. Which I could believe that, honestly.
Sure.
With the way he kind of does his own thing and goes against the grain with everything, I wouldn't doubt that was what happened. But either way, he blew it, man. He blew it, and like. You can't go back and fix it now. When one of Bo's sons is getting ready to speak tomorrow, and a couple of players who are now putting their name on it are going to say, "Jim, you're wrong. Bo did do something wrong here. He didn't take care of it before the sun went down," or whatever cliche thing he wanted to say. It's going to be, dude. It's going to be bad. I think this is about to get really, really bad for Harbaugh. I was listening to some different sports talk radio shows today and reading some articles online and some tweets and some of this and some of that. I don't know. I don't want to come off as sounding insensitive in this thing, because I really, first of all, there's no part of me that wants to stick up for Jim Harbaugh. I've been pretty clear that I thought he should have been fired last year. I don't know if what he's doing right now, as stupid as it sounded and as much as he put his foot in his mouth and as bad as it's going to end up looking for him, if it's like a fireable thing. And I've heard a lot of different people bring up that he's going to get canned because of this. And I just am like, the only thing I can think about is that, like, so much of what the program is about and stands for is based on Bo, and just so much of it now was like BS.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only thing I can think of. And if Harbaugh's going to continue to push that, continue to perpetuate the Bo narratives, and continue to have, so much of what he does from Bo, you might just be like, they might just have to say, like, dude, we can't have you doing this crap. Like,
Right.
like that's like, in my opinion, from what I know so far, from what I've seen on the surface, like Jim Harbaugh didn't do anything wrong back when this was going on, as far as I know. I mean, maybe one of these players is going to come out tomorrow and say, like, I know for a fact Jim Harbaugh saw something and didn't do anything. Like, I don't know. Maybe they say that. If that happens, we got a whole different ball of wax here. But I don't think anything he's done with the specific situation back when it was going on, back when he was a player, that he did anything wrong. He sounded like you said, like a tone deaf idiot at the camp on Thursday. I don't think what he said is necessarily fireable. But if it's going to be this massive circus show all year and he just doesn't seem to get it, and everything about Michigan's program is built on this foundation of stuff that's just not true, like that Bo was this just oozing integrity and did everything by the book and did everything the right way, and there's the statue and there's the building, and now all of a sudden all of that is just nonsense and garbage, and Harbaugh's just not willing to let go of it. I don't know, man. I think it's gonna get hairy for him in a hurry, and it's gonna start tomorrow.
Well, the press conference it's a big deal because two people who were anonymous in the report have actually put their names to what they said. They're the two guys, or at least two people, who claim to have gone directly to Bo Schembechler. I have the names here. Daniel Kwiatkowski, I hope I got that right. He played from 1977 to 1979. And then
Giovanni
Johnson, yeah. Right, from 1982 to 1986. Who knows what's going to come out tomorrow. I know that his son, Matt, who, by the way, let me just make this clear to the people.
I was wondering if you were going to speak on this.
To the people who have felt the need to point out that, well, it's his adoptive son. It's not really his son. Put aside the fact that is just a disgusting response from somebody who clearly has no interest in, like, actually having an adult conversation with a topic like this. The fact that he's his adoptive son means nothing. Now, granted, they did have, I guess, an issue back in like the late 90s regarding, a $500,000 lawsuit about trying to sell some memorabilia from Michigan Stadium, and it got settled somehow. And so they haven't had the best relationship. But to my knowledge, that doesn't mean that because you've had a poor relationship with your father, that all of a sudden now you can't be trusted when you come forward with something like this. And if they did have a poor relationship and this stuff happened to him, I guess that might play into that relationship a little bit and how things kind of fell apart. So I just think, I have a very hard time, and I remember saying this to somebody. Somebody had brought up the fact that we don't know if Bo Schembechler ran it up the chain of command, right? We're not sure kind of what he did with this information. Well, we know that that's not a valid argument, right? Because Bo Schembechler served as athletic director from 1988 to 1990. Yeah. He was the chain of command. And if you follow Michigan football and you know who Bo Schembechler was in Ann Arbor, he was the chain of command. And if he wanted something changed, it would have changed. So you either have to buy into two realities. One, that he knew absolutely nothing about this whatsoever, was completely in the dark, or he did know and he just didn't do enough. And to me, given how prevalent it seems that this was in terms of discussion on campus, how many guys knew about it, the fact that assistant coaches would even make jokes about it, like, hey, if you got the sniffles, if you're not doing this, or if you're not running hard, we'll send you to the doctor. The idea that Bo Schembechler didn't know anything about this, I'm sorry, it's just a bridge too far. It doesn't make any sense.
I mean, it's been disproved, in my opinion. I mean, the report was 240 pages, I think, outlining specific examples of it being brought up to Bo and him doing nothing about it. I mean, I know he's not here. I know the doctor's not here. I know it was a long time ago. I don't care. I really don't. I what you just said makes it so that there's no way. There's just no way. Like you said, he either didn't do what he was supposed to, or I mean I don't think there is anything else. I think he just didn't do what he was supposed to. Like you said, there's no way he didn't know, given his position, his power, what he was involved in, the fact that he did become athletic director at some point. Like, yeah, there's just no way. There's no way. I think we have a quick question. I want to throw this up here. Hell to the no. There's no way in hell Jim Harbaugh's at the press conference tomorrow. There's no way.
No. Yeah.
There's no way he'll go to that. There's no way he'll go to that, especially now, given how his comments were received and what's about to be said. Because anytime he goes to anything where there's media at, they're gonna try to get him, and he avoids that like the plague. So no,
Yeah.
he's not gonna be there. He's not gonna put himself in that position. Now I've wondered about this a little bit. Like, at what point does it get to a point where, investigative reporter types, and I just frankly don't consider myself to be that kind of person. I didn't go to school to be a journalist. I didn't get into this to cover stuff like this. That's not to say that we're not going to, or that I'm just going to avoid it, or I'm going to ignore it. But like, I don't really even know the protocol. Like, can you just roll up on somebody at their house? I mean, like, and wait for them to make themselves available and talk to. I don't really know. I don't know. That's a weird thing. I mean, you see clips of that where people get bombarded out in the street. Hey, what happened? What happened? Microphones are just shoved in their face and people run to their cars. And I don't know if it's going to turn into anything like that. But if people are going to want to talk to guys like Jim Harbaugh, guys like Ward Manuel, Lloyd Carr, Gary Moeller, previous coaches and guys who coached under Bo and were at Michigan for a long time, I don't know how you go about doing that. Like, you're not just going to call up and be like, "Hey, Lloyd, you want to rap about this whole Dr. Anderson thing for a minute?" He's not going to answer that phone call. So, I'm really interested to see what is said tomorrow, and then what happens after that. What kinds of actions are taken by Michigan? I mean, I was on board with taking the statue down before. I just thought, like, as a person who's 36 years old, maybe I'm not the best person to speak on this because I don't have any connection to Bo at all. Zero. I mean, like, I know what he did and what he was about and how successful he was in the 70s and turning the tide against Ohio State, the 10-year war, I know all of that stuff, but, like, it doesn't resonate with me. I don't have any emotional connection to it, so I don't care. If it's going to be easy and it's going to appease the victims and it's going to be, remove any, like, negative talking point about the program moving forward, then just take it down. The people who love Bo and who are coming to his defense blindly can still freaking do that without the statue standing in front of the building. Like, that statue's only been up there since 2013. Like, did those people feel differently before the statue was up versus after? Just take it down and rename the building. I mean, like, so.
Well, unfortunately, we're in an environment now where cancel culture has become like this hot button topic.
I know.
And everybody wants to lump everything into it. But my God, when 800 people come forward and it gets to this level, you can't just, it's the fact that people think it's cancel culture. It's the fact that people want to mention, Bo Schembechler's not here to defend himself, and a lot of people. It doesn't, like, none of that. It would be great if they were here, but they would be here had Michigan not waited so long to deal with it. Unfortunately, we're at where we're at now, and now that this information is coming out, you don't just get to sit back and say, well, shit, it was a long time ago and the people involved were dead, so we'll just kind of like, what can we do? You can't do that.
Quick question on this from Ray. When was Harbaugh at Michigan? What did he see? He was at Michigan from 82 to 86, so smack in the middle of Bo's, towards the latter part of Bo's tenure, really, but when, Bo was Bo at this point. He was established. All of his tropes and all of his sayings and all of his accomplishments were plastered all over campus. Like, he was Bo at this point when Jim Harbaugh was there. And Jim was his quarterback. He was an All-American. And now you see, Jim Harbaugh is essentially a reincarnation of Bo at this point. I mean, he does he dresses like him. He does so many things like him. He's got the big poster of him hanging up in his office of him and Bo together. So,
and I believe Jim Harbaugh even commented specifically on the doctor, not recently, but I remember something to the effect of him saying he'd never had met with the doctor, had to go see Dr. Anderson, and had never had that experience. And by the way, just because people go to this doctor and don't have that experience, that doesn't call into question the people who did.
Right.
I mean, you're talking about nearly 1,000 people. I mean, not everybody came forward, so this isn't like somebody just decided to say something. I don't think anybody's debating right now that Dr. Anderson was doing what he was doing.
It's
right?
such a weird argument. Like, a guy can murder somebody. They don't murder everyone they come in contact with. Like,
Right.
like this dude was a monster, man. He was picking and choosing and finding who he could and couldn't do things. I mean, like,
I lived right next to the guy. He never killed me.
That's exactly like that's how those people operate, man. They're predators, man. They find their opportunity. They're not in it to get caught. They're not in it so they have to stop.
Yeah.
So that argument's weird. But also Harbaugh was at Michigan, or was around the program and at Michigan a lot when he was a kid because his dad was on the staff too. So and the doctor was there for like 40 years or something or more. I mean, he was there forever. He was there into the early 2000s. Actually,
2003. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the second part of the question is the important one. What did Harbaugh see? What did he know? What kinds of things has he heard? Because I'm going to be honest, man. Like, there's quite a few people who played at Michigan over the last 6, 8, 10 years that I know and talk to on a semi-regular basis because of what I did as a person who covered recruiting. I started, meeting these people when they were younger, got to know them as they were at Michigan, got to know some of their parents and their families a little bit. Like, this was a widespread thing. Everybody at the program knew about what this doctor was doing.
Yeah.
So I don't believe for 1 second that Jim Harbaugh was clueless about it while he was at Michigan for 5 years. There's no way. Now, what he would say about it in terms of how much he knew or the details or, what did anything ever happen to him or did he ever see anything? Like, I don't know if he'll ever get into the specifics of that. It doesn't sound like it, not with what he said last Thursday. But that's the big question. And to me, like, I still don't think that puts Jim in like the fireable category.
No, I mean
it's touchy though. It is touchy. It's not like if someone was like he needs to be fired for this. I wouldn't like pound the table and call him an idiot for saying that.
But based for other reasons, right? Like we've already come into the situation into this year thinking that probably should have already happened before this even became a thing, right? Like, so I guess against that backdrop, if somebody was pounding the table saying Harbaugh needs to go, no, I don't think I would argue against it all that much. But I think if to what you said, he was there for 5 years, the idea that he wouldn't know anything is kind of hard to believe. And taking that same logic, it certainly applies to Bo Schembechler in the 20-plus years he was there. The idea that he wouldn't know is just, it's beyond belief.
And there were public red flags about the doctor already. Like, he had already been moved because of some behavioral stuff at some other positions. I don't remember the details of that or where he was before and how he got to become the team doctor. But dude, it's just a mess, man. It is a mess, and it's going to get messier, and it's going to be talked about even more now that people are coming out and speaking on it with their names. I mean, the 240-page report with a lot of anonymous sources was one thing. But when you've got a guy like Bo's son and players who were in the program in the 70s and also the 80s that are getting ready to stand up in front of everybody and talk about their experiences, which I'm sure are really difficult to talk about, it's going to get messy. It's going to get messy.
Yeah.
And you're talking, the sheer numbers, the potential of the lawsuits being upwards of like $1 billion. Like it's absolutely massive. It's huge.
Sure.
It's a huge issue. It's a huge ordeal. And I don't know, like I don't even know like what the fix is, honestly. I like, obviously you hope to help the victims in any way possible, whether that's, the counseling or stuff after the fact and then compensation and then, yeah, because a lot of the people aren't even around anymore. So it's not like there's going to be jail time. Nobody's going to lose their job within the department probably. Right. Probably. I mean, maybe. Again, Ward Manuel's the athletic director. He also played during this time, played for Bo and knew the doctor. So kind of surprised he hasn't come out and said anything about it.
Yeah.
And I was going to get to this. I didn't know if it was insensitive or not, but another question from Trepa Coles. Will this affect the product on the field for 2021 or recruiting? I don't know how it couldn't. I mean, any distraction is a distraction. Yeah. And so if this is still not entirely, like, and it's not going to be, like, there is no complete resolution to this, but if there's still something hanging over the program a little bit, or somebody's still writing this story, or somebody still wants to know this, and the first press conference you get Jim Harbaugh at, somebody asked about this, well, then there it is, rearing its head again, and it's something he's got to be thinking about and dealing with, and like, oh my God, is like, he's thinking like, how long is this going to be around, and when are they going to stop asking me about this? Like, we're getting ready to go to the Big Ten Media Days in a month. Like, I'm certain it's going to come up there because nobody's probably going to talk to Harbaugh again between now and then.
Yeah.
And if 3 people are getting ready to talk about it publicly tomorrow, how many more people are going to talk about it publicly between tomorrow and July 21st and 22nd, or whenever those days are for Big Ten Media Days? So, yeah, I just don't think this is going away, man. And I think it is going to be something that you see lingering into the season. And, how much that actually affects the product on the field or the players themselves playing, I think that's probably minimal. Maybe not at all, but the focus of the coaches, the focus of Jim Harbaugh and what he's dealing with and what ends up happening from here on out, I think it certainly is going to have an effect. It's going to be a stressor, if nothing else.
Yeah. I mean, what's really weird is that it did kind of feel like it was, I don't know if dying out is the right way to put it, but the report came out, people talked about it, and then it just kind of shrunk day by day. And I think, initially you were wondering what Michigan was going to do, if anything, and talking about the renaming of the building and a statue. And then all of a sudden Harbaugh gets asked about it at a football camp, and now you've got people coming out in a press conference. And I think that's how this thing is going to go until something is done, is you're going to kind of see this, like something happens and then it drops and then somebody else comes out, and it's going to be one of those things that lingers. And in terms of, the question that was posed, will it have any effect on the season? I don't think so. Will it have any effect on recruiting? Possibly, because if the University of Michigan does decide that, hey, we want to distance ourselves from Bo Schembechler's legacy, how is Jim Harbaugh going to take that information? He is, like you said, he's almost like Bo reincarnated. Can he continue on in his position there if the university takes a strong stance? It just seems like those two worlds can't coexist. And based on what Harbaugh said, it doesn't seem like he's even remotely close to being at a place where he can accept that and work within that environment.
Or I think what may be worse is if Michigan decides to do nothing, and the statue stays up there and the name is still on there, and this gets worse and worse, and more people come forward and more people come forward and more facts are revealed, and then you've got every program in the country saying like, that's where you want to go?
Yeah.
Look at that. That's disgusting. You want to go there? That head coach was part of that stuff. Like that's what other programs do. That's like negative recruiting is a massive part of what goes on, and that's a big one. That's not like, oh, the quarterback doesn't play very good, or like, oh, it's not even really like a reach. It's not even really like a low blow. But at some point, like a parent of another player, a parent of a recruit would have to be like, damn, like that went on there for that long, and Harbaugh was a part of it then, and he kind of knew about some stuff, and like that's the culture of their program. Like, I'm sending my son away for you to take care of him.
Yeah.
I mean, like, that has to start to factor in a little bit. And again, negative recruiting can be pretty nasty. I don't know if a coach would go that route and use that against Michigan, but I think
somebody
some
out
would.
there will. Yeah.
I think some would. Maybe a little private conversation with a mom and a dad or whatever. So yeah, I think it is a big deal, and I think it will spill into what actually is going on within the program.
I have a hard time believing that Michigan won't do anything, given the fact that they paid for this investigation to take place. They obviously wanted to get some information. They wanted to get a better understanding of what happened. To me, the report really did a good job of putting that together, and there were some unknown pieces, like some anonymous sources who are going to speak tomorrow. And so I think Michigan is at a spot where they are absolutely going to have to act on this pretty damn quickly, because the longer it goes, just the worse they look. I mean, they're in this position because they let it linger and fester for so long. So it seems to me like they would want to act, but again, it's Bo Schembechler. It is the University of Michigan and Michigan football, and what I said, weeks ago, they have to, whatever it is they do, they got to get it right. And if what Harbaugh said is any indication of how this thing is going to go, who the hell knows where this thing is headed?
You can't go anywhere on that campus where football stuff is at without seeing something to do with Bo Schembechler. Yeah. Whether it's his name, the team, those who stay will be champions, the stylized skinny block M. I mean, right when you walk into the football museum, which is attached to Schembechler Hall, the football building, the first giant display right there when you walk in is Bo. It's like there's the same statue that's out front. There's a mini version of that inside. One of his old headsets is there. One of his old sweaters is there. His hat, like it's all right there. Then in the backdrop over here, there's a painting of all the Michigan coaches, and guess who's got one of the bigger heads on there? Bo. And then again, the name of the building itself, and then you walk down the tunnel of the most famous stadium in the country, and you have the team on giant support pillars up above that are, I mean, the letters are probably 5 feet tall.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be a massive undertaking and a pretty big facelift and a pretty big change. I wanted to touch back on something you said too, where, you know, it's like what's going to happen tomorrow and what's going to happen the next day and how swiftly can this be resolved and things like that. That unfortunately, like that's how these things play out typically. Like you look back at like what the Larry Nassar stuff and like what's going on with Deshaun Watson right now in the NFL. Like the first day it's like it's 3 people, and then the next day like, oh, there's 9 victims, and then the next day like, oh, there's 15 victims that want to come out and speak, and then like we know that the numbers are massive in this case. So how many people want to come out and put their name on it and actually speak on it in a public forum, I think is only going to continue to go up. Maybe even after it's resolved from like the football program's end, I still don't think it's going to go away. Yeah. So, you know, it's just going to be something to watch play out over the next couple of months. I mean, we're still like 80 some days away from the first game. Yeah. That's a lot of days. That's a lot of days for more stuff to come out, for more people to come forward, for more facts to be revealed, and I really don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how big this is going to get. I don't know how big of an impact it's going to have on the football team and on Jim Harbaugh and on everything that's going on. But I mean, like the players that are there, like they obviously know because they're part of the program and they see the stuff all around campus. But like I'm 36 and I don't know anything about Bo Schembechler. Like they don't know about him as a legacy and what he really meant to so many people. So I think you're right. Like, I don't know if like the players on the field and what they do would really be affected at all. But I think like, you know, whatever Harbaugh ends up going through and whatever this ends up meaning to him, it could trickle down a little bit. And I certainly think negative recruiting is something that I would be wary of if I'm Michigan. But you just got to get it right, man. You got to fix this. You got to stop the bleeding, and not for the sake of getting it out of the way and getting it over with, but doing the right thing. Yeah, doing the right thing by the people that were really affected by this, not because of football. Although like that's a big part of why all this thing is a thing anyway. So it's all intertwined, and it's all just going to be a circus for a little while, man. Starting with tomorrow. Yeah, we'll see how that plays out, man. I'm really excited's not the right word, but like I'm just so anxious to see what's said, what happens, and what happens moving forward.
It's either going to be something where I think people look at it and they say, okay, well, we didn't really learn anything we didn't already know outside of like a couple of names to some statements. Sure. Or if it goes the way it's been portrayed, where apparently, you know, he's got some evidence where it's going to be indisputable, I really think you're just going to see things are going to ramp up pretty quickly, because if it gets real for a lot of people, and depending on what this guy says and what the 2 other former players say tomorrow, what was in the report was already pretty disturbing. Yeah. So if it continues to get worse, and if in fact Bo did know that his son had gone through this, and if there's some sort of correspondence or evidence that speaks to that, boy, oh boy, you have to move on it pretty quickly. You cannot allow that statue to stand for any longer than necessary. Same with the building, same with the photos, same with the sayings. And you're right, it's going to be a huge facelift because he's everywhere. Yeah. I mean, he's right downtown, the Bo store. Like, what the hell? You know, like, what do you do?
Oh, my God, those people are thinking, like...
Jesus, right? Like,
Can we say this is Bo Jackson? Will that fly in Ann Arbor? Yeah, that, man... And there's a big. I've talked to some people about this who are way more connected to it than I am, and I've been around it for a lot longer. And that like the economic ripple that they fear this could have, like the people that are. I mean, you said it, man. Like some of the comments you see that people are just like, screw everybody, man. Bo he's the king, man. He's the king of Ann Arbor. Yeah. Excuse me, almost couldn't get that out. He's the king of Ann Arbor. He would never let this happen. Like there's a fear that large factions of valuable people would wash their hands of Michigan football if they wipe Bo Schembechler out of existence. Which that to me is the weirdest part because again, it was before my time, so I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't care.
I mean, it sucks that that's even a reality, but there are some people out there like they read the report and they said, the response was, okay, well, I'm going to need more evidence, and then they're going to hear 2 or 3 people speak
More
tomorrow,
evidence,
and they're going to say, well, I need more evidence because so and so is not a reliable source, or this person got kicked off the team for X, so he's got an axe to grind, or whatever it is. There's never, to me, I feel like there's people that either are open and willing to hear what these people say and are going to take it for what it is, knowing that not a single person in this world outside of like a handful of sick people want to have their names attached to something like this for what? Financial gain or whatever it is you think you're going to get. People aren't rushing out to claim that they were sexually assaulted. It's just not something that you do. But for some people, there will never be enough evidence to convict Bo Schembechler, even though it's not in court, in the matter of public opinion and what should the University of Michigan do. This isn't an innocent until proven guilty situation. Michigan isn't going to court to fight over a statue. Right. This is, they asked for a report and an investigation to be conducted. That was done. Information was given, and now they've got to decide what they want to do with that information. No matter how far it goes, no matter how many people speak up, I don't think it's ever going to be enough for some people.
All right, so we'll close with this, man, and we'll be quick and easy about it. Is that statue there on the opening kickoff this year?
As of now, I don't see how it can be. I don't see how it can be.
I think it comes down. I think it was like fence. People were on the fence about it a couple weeks ago when the report came out. There's going to be a couple more people that go off the fence in the direction of taking it down after this stuff tomorrow, and I think it's just going to keep building. So yeah. I think it comes down. I do. I think, like I said, easy is not the right word, but like that's the easiest. Just take it down. Like just take it down. Right. Like at the end of the day, what does that statue really do for what your program stands for now and wants to be moving forward? Even if Jim Harbaugh and the other higher ups at the football program think that Bo was a saint and couldn't possibly have had any knowledge of this, like that feeling you have in yourself doesn't change because the statue comes down. So
correct. And a lot of fans need to apply that logic to themselves and how they feel about Bo Schembechler. No matter how you feel about him with or without a statue, you're more than welcome to continue to revere it, to have the posters up in your man cave, whatever. You can do all of that stuff. It's just that doesn't mean the University of Michigan has to support and endorse it. That's a difference.
Yep, and I never did, and I never would, because again, it was before my time. So for me, it's real easy to say that. But I do think that that's the path of least resistance, and like not that that's what you should be looking, just an easy out. But I think like if an action has to be taken, like that's the one to take. That's where I'm at. So I would say that it comes down before Michigan kicks off on September the 4th, and if not, man, I just think this thing is going to have to do like a freaking 180 somehow. I don't know how it doesn't.
Then I don't know. Then what did they pay for? You know what I mean? Like what they clearly knew something was going on. If not, like it almost seems like. Did
you need like Bo on video? Like
right. What were you hoping to get? You got 800, 600 people. What more were you hoping to get to sort of swing the pendulum one way or another? To me, it seems like they got enough with the report. This press conference is just going to be further evidence, whatever you want to call it, of people that went through this. And regardless of how you feel about Bo Schembechler, what he knew, what he didn't know, the reality is he is the face of Michigan football. He was there during the time, for a large chunk of the time that this took place. He was in a position to do something about it. And he was part of a massive institutional failure. There's no debating that. You can debate how much he knew, what he knew, whatever. Those conversations can happen. But he was a part of a massive institutional failure. And, when you're the face of Michigan football, that's why you get a lot of attention.
Yep, no doubt about it. So not the most fun topic to talk about, but that's where we're going to close it. We will be back on I mean, shoot, man, we might jump back on tomorrow, depending on what goes on with this thing and how how much of a hot button topic it is. But we will be there live and in color to see this press conference with Matt Schembechler and a couple of former players to see what they have to say. So check it out over at WolverineDigest.com. We're going to provide as much coverage as possible. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, man. Actually, if we talk about this a little bit more tomorrow, we'll see what comes out of it. We'll see how we're feeling. See if our pipes are good to go. See how I'm recovering here with these cough drops and everything. But yeah, thanks everybody for listening. We will be back, if not tomorrow, definitely by Friday.